the Ambassador of Canada to Ukraine, Natalka Cmoc. Please. Oh, there you go.
Dobry dzień. I will speak in English. Distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, Pan Yuri, Pan Zenon, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to be here. I wasn't sure if I would be able to travel from Ukraine, so I'm very fortunate to be here with you today. I just want to say that I had the pleasure to be with Christia Freelandahl last week, where she was collecting information to put sort of her thoughts on what Canada could do in terms of the reconstruction effort. So you'll be hearing from her, so I'm not going to speak about some of the things that she will. Also in the crowd is my colleague Jocelyn Kinnear, who I believe is around here. She was also in Ukraine last week with the multi-donor platform, so there she is. I encourage you to speak with her as well. She's the person in Ottawa who's pulling together our strategy for what Canada does in Ukraine, so please do speak with her. And I'd also like to point to Franck Desrosiers and Vivian Lowe, who are here as well. They attended the Rebuild conference in Warsaw. They are from NRCan and looking at how do we support energy. So just a little shout out. I will speak to my perspective of Ukraine, and I'm an anthropologist, so you will sort of sense a little bit more of a different approach than perhaps the investors in the room have. Many of you know that on Sunday I lost my stepfather, and it made me really reflect on what is grief. Because every Ukrainian I have met in Ukraine has now lost someone close who has died in this war. Most children that you meet, you don't really think about it, but were born in the time of war. And unfortunately, as we saw some of the strikes, some have been born and died since the full-scale invasion. So my point is that grief is ever present, with daily funerals in every town and every city. But it is not discussed a lot in Ukraine, and even though it is thick and ever present. Everyone also has somebody who is fighting in the war, someone close to them. Many families have several members fighting. I have met husbands and wives who fight, or a wife who has joined after her husband passed. There's been families who have 3 generations fighting. There's no one more invested in the outcome of this war than Ukrainians. But I have also come to realize and learn that grief is actually a very powerful form of love. Wherever you are at 9 a.m. in Ukraine, you stop, you bow your head in respect, and it's in memory of all those who have served. It is a collective grief. It is also collective gratitude. I meet with mothers who lost their only child on the front. They are some of the strongest and most remarkable people I've ever met. Many of them are my age, so I relate with them, I've become friends with them, and I admire them immensely. They told me the kind of loss could really break a person, but they chose not to let it break them, and they have transformed, and they have put all of their love for their child into helping others. That's powerful. But you understand that their love is really strong. It's a love that extends to their country, to their culture, to their identity. It's unbreakable and it's fierce. It means they're fighting fiercely in every way you can think of. So if you understand this, you'll also appreciate that once you've experienced this kind of collective grief, you will not stand to be betrayed. The Ukrainian president and government understand this very well. The world is also slowly coming to better understand that this is not merely a local war between Russia and Ukraine, and that the outcomes of this war has consequences far beyond their borders. It affects all of us. You understand that a Russian victory would reshape our geopolitical order, only heighten security risks in Europe and embolden other autocratic regimes. So putting our efforts to ensure a secure democratic Ukraine is more than helping Ukraine. It is our collective strategic and economic interests at heart here, our principles, and we need to hold on to these dearly. Yes, I'm speaking about sovereignty, our borders, our people, but I'm also speaking about identity and self-worth. It is for our agreed collective respect for democratic institutions and rule-based world order. Canada wants to see Ukraine achieve its Euro-Atlantic aspirations. We know this would be a win-win-win for Canada, Europe, and Ukraine, so we need to work together. It isn't easy, so let me stress a few points just for context. Point 1. Ukraine is showing remarkable economic resilience, doing miracles with what it has. Ukraine's GDP for 2025 is $200 billion US dollars, and the budget covers roughly 58% of it and spending against 40% of revenue, leaving a deficit, all the mathematicians in the room, of $38 billion to be covered by the assistance of others, largely covered by Canada and European partners. Canada alone has provided $12.4 billion direct financial support. I believe this has been the best way that Canada has been able to support because it allows Ukraine to have the flexibility to prioritize and adjust as needed. And I strongly believe that it has made a difference, and we see this in Ukraine's economic resilience. We should applaud Ukraine for what it is able to do. Let's look. Government is still functioning. People are getting services, schools, health, energy, and institutions are working, as we are seeing with the corruption scandal. It's Ukrainians who uncovered that, and it's Ukrainians who are leading on that investigation. Point number 2. Ukrainians believe in Ukraine. All surveys show consistently that Ukrainians, more than anyone else, want to be democratic and free. Consistently 60% or higher support for the president. 76% of Ukrainians believe that Ukraine can win the war with proper support. 76% of Ukrainians categorically reject Russian demands to cede territory, and they do not want peace at all cost. 93% of Ukrainians say it is important that Ukraine become a fully functioning democracy. 74% wish Ukraine to become part of the EU. The number one priority that they identify in surveys consistently, Ukrainians say it's fighting corruption. After this, it's impact of hostilities, economic difficulties, impact on mobilization. So when we are speaking about rebuilding Ukraine today, we are speaking about a country that has a very clear vision of itself, its priorities, and its future. Point number 3. Most Ukrainians who are in Ukraine have chosen to remain in Ukraine and are choosing to stay. Most have opportunities to leave, and they have stayed, and they are making a difference. And when you think about what might make them leave at this point, it is actually quite surprising. So some of the obvious, when you think about some of the humanitarian crisis, there's a huge humanitarian crisis related to water issues, energy. Entire communities are living with up to 16 hours of no electricity. They're staying. So we need to continue to support those areas, but those are not the issues that would have them leave. What would have them leave? If they could no longer have shelters for their schools. And that's a priority that Ukrainians keep raising. Not all children have the ability to go to sheltered schools, so that is something that it's an ongoing. In Kharkiv, for example, there's only about 10% of children that can actually go into schools and shelters. So, I mean, it's something that Ukrainians are prioritizing. The second one would be opportunities of local economy. Local economy is what keeps Ukraine going. So if we want to invest, that would be the area. The other area is social and cultural. They are investing in that, reading books, going to plays. People stay wake up in the morning at 6 in the morning to go buy tickets for a play that you can't get. That's their priority. So there's really strong connections here. Yesterday, Ukrainians and Ukrainska Pravda, and I encourage you to read it, released a manifesto. And it has many respected authors, but I would just like to do a shout out that it includes Mikhailo Vinitsky, someone from Toronto, and it is a powerful document, and it clearly states where Ukraine's head is at. And December 1 is not by coincidence. This is the day that Ukrainians chose in 1991 to be independent. So the manifesto is called Survive, Endure, and Prevail. And I'd like to just quote a few things, if you let me. So this is their thoughts. They warn not to believe that a war will end from a negotiation. Victory is unlikely to come as a singular event, but rather will be achieved through a dynamic, multi-stage process. They note that Moscow has not managed to reach any of its strategic goals in almost 4 years of the full-scale invasion. The greatest threat is a prolonged war of attrition, which will lead to the gradual depletion of Ukraine's human and economic potential. They also believe victory is possible and attainable for Ukraine. It is important to define this victory to eliminate the path of achievement with well-founded hope. They have a requirement for a minimum victory. What that would look like? There's 3 dimensions to this, they say. 1 is the military dimension, strategic neutralization of the enemy. 2 is the political dimension, preservation of sovereignty. And 3 is the human dimension, a successful Ukraine. Ukraine needs to paralyze Russia's ability to achieve any meaningful successes in the pursuit of its military and political objectives. And Ukraine has some amazing strategic wins that is very, very motivating. I mean, just think about last year's Ukrainian drone and missile strikes that forced the Russian fleet to withdraw from the western part of the Black Sea and restored the grain export corridor, or whether you're thinking about how it blocked and denied Russian manned aviation access, and you can go on and on. And every day, Ukrainian cyber forces disrupt Russian cyber operations. Moscow's information operations have failed to undermine either the domestic resilience or Western support. These are all little victories, and they're important victories. It is that collective determination that I spoke about. Nothing is more powerful than that emotional attachment. Second, it's that drive to constant adaptation and innovation. Ukrainians stay the course. They are always one step ahead in the development of critical capabilities and technologies. We are witnessing a technological innovation race where we are seeing constant scaling up new systems. Ukraine must maintain the strategic initiative in this race so that it is Russia and not Ukraine that is forced to react and defend. So I leave you with this thought. We are witnessing a paradigm shift. And as you think about investment, I encourage you to learn from Ukrainians and look at what they invest in. Everything is creation, innovation, and all aspects are important. And their innovation, like I said, includes arts, culture, books. They see this as part of their resistance. And they have NGOs focused on just startups and change, and we can join them. Instead of thinking of investing in products, let's think of how we can invest in Ukraine's innovation and startup culture. As stated so well in the manifesto, by investing in Ukraine, we stop thinking of Ukraine as a problem, and we see how instead it has become part of a global solution to challenges. It's going to be part of the solution for the challenges we all face in our humanity. This is the best way to invest in Ukraine's victory, which is our victory. Slava Ukraini! Heroям slava!